as the tribal chief over Kusaug. Then on 6 June 1957, Kusaugs elected their own tribal chief in the person of Abogrago Azumah I. This was endorsed by a committee of inquiry, ratified by the last colonial governor general, and upheld by the Court of Appeal in 1958. In 1966, the military junta, in a blind anti-Nkrumah decree, NLCD 112, destooled several chiefs across the country, including Azumah II, Azumah I, setting aside the 1958 Court of Appeal ruling and re-subjugating Kusaugs to Mamprose colonialism. In 1983, the Rawlings regime restored the 1958 Court of Appeal ruling and Kusaugs independent through PNDC Law 75. Mamproses took advantage of NPP coming to power in 2001 and went to the Supreme Court to challenge PNDC Law 75. Realizing that their case had no legal merit, they applied to discontinue with the liberty to reapply. On 29 April 2003, the Supreme Court granted their application to discontinue, but denied them the liberty to reapply, leaving Asigri Abogrago Azumah II as the only recognized Bokunaba. With the NPP coming to power in 2017 and a Mamprose as vice president, the Mamproses have chosen not to pursue due process, but to embark on illegality and criminality in the hope that the Boku skin will be stolen from Kusaugs and given back to them. The crux of the matter. What is therefore the crux of the matter? These are the facts of the matter. The crux of the matter is that the cause of Boku is deeply rooted in an irrational sense of entitlement by some Mamproses. Not all Mamproses, we hope. And this is backed by myths, tales, and British colonial machinations, as well as wrong perceptions and understandings of how a constitutional democracy is to run. The mindset is rooted in a multi-dimensional delusion. First is the delusion of the Mamproses in Boku that God made Kusaugs to be ruled by Mamproses. Second is the delusion on the part of the chief of Nalerugu that he has the right to inskin and export a chief to rule over Kusaugs on our land. This is rooted in a further delusion that the chief of Nalerugu owns all the lands of Kusaugs, Frafra, Bemoba, and parts of Konkomba and Gonja areas. In fact, Mamproses call their chief Dunyarana. Dunyarana means literally the owner of the world. The third dimension of the delusion is that they think that their political party, the NPP, is in power, which is a boost to their chances to take the Boku skin away from Kusaugs. And the fourth and final delusion is that they think that their tribesmate, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, is the vice president with unrestrained powers to reimpose Mamprose colonialism over Kusaugs. In their minds, Dr. Bawumia is a vice president for Mamproses, not for all Ghanaians. And as the vice president, he is to uphold Mamprose traditions and not the constitution of the Republic of Ghana. This is the delusion at the heart of the Boku crisis. The problem is that there is no easy way of treating a delusion. Boku is a national security failure. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, the Boku crisis is a massive, embarrassing national security failure. The security forces in Boku have proven to be either compromised or incompetent. The security forces have failed in very many ways to secure Boku in over 2 years up to the conflict. To start with, a lot of the military, especially who are deployed in Boko are inexperienced, new recruits, they are twitchy and trigger-happy personnel. Due to several happenings, Kusaases have little confidence in the military command in Boko. And let me give you a few. The unprofessional conduct of the military, the killings of unarmed civilians, including women and children in their homes, and the inability of the security to secure the main business center of Boko and key public institutions all point to one conclusion: national security failure. Very high-profile killings and attacks, including an attack on immigration officers, took place meters away from the central police station in Boko. The surrounding of the Presbyterian Hospital and Nurses Training College remain a major front line, with gunmen regularly prowling and shooting openly, while the military have their posts inside the walls of these facilities. The market and town center, where most public and private businesses operate, remain unsecure. The security has failed to secure the main street of less than 2 kilometers running through the town center. Yet there are military posts all around the periphery of the Mamprisi enclave in Boko, forming a protective wall around the Mamprisi community and deterring people in the outskirts from accessing the town center. After an attack on immigration officers meters away from the central police station, rather than secure the area as a crime scene, the military embarked on a beating spree of civilians who were using bypasses, including sick women and children heading to clinics, compelling them to use the main street and to go through the very spot that the attack occurred. A Mamprisi National Security Operative by name Fatawu Nambe infiltrated, or rather got embedded in the military, and led several murderous attacks on unarmed civilians around the outskirts of Boko, including pregnant women. Fatawu was positively identified as on a number of occasions by eyewitnesses and was eventually killed on the 9th of February 8, 2023, fighting alongside his fellow Mampusis in a Kusaas suburb. No investigation has been conducted into the circumstances surrounding Fatawu's involvement and death in the conflict. The security leadership had never denied Fatawu's involvement, but they simply swept it under the carpet. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, in recent weeks, attacks on trucks took place around Walewale and Napanduri. A cargo truck loaded with timber heading towards Garu was attacked and set ablaze. Those who committed the act filmed it and shared it on social media. The same week, a second truck headed the same direction was also ambushed. But thanks to the local community, the vigilance of the local community, 3 people were apprehended with a weapon. The culprits were beaten, filmed, and handed over to the police. While the police were still processing the tax, calls came from the secretary of the chief of Nalerigu and from the NPP chairman for the Northeast region, demanding the immediate release of the bandits. It was said on the call that the chief of Nalerigu is aware of the actions of the gang and that the attacks were sanctioned by the Nalerigu police. All these calls were widely circulated on social media. The pressure on the police continued and the criminals were released in less than 24 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, after the illegal enskinment of the chief by the chief of Nalerigu, a high court judge issued an arrest warrant for both the Nalerigu chief and the illegally enskinned Seydou Abagre. Within 24 hours, the warrant against the chief of Nalerigu was rescinded. The judge who issued the warrant was hounded out of Bolga. A replacement judge suspended the warrant against Seydou Abagre. Then we now have the Minister of Chieftaincy and the President of the land himself calling for mediation and compromises on the Boko Chieftaincy affairs. Calls for mediation and compromises are exactly what the Mampusis sought to achieve with their contemptuous disregard to due process and the use of violence. Government has clearly proven that it is either incapable or unwilling to enforce the law and order in Bawku. It appears to be saying one thing to the Ghanaian public and doing the complete opposite on the ground. Ghana has 3 ministries dealing with national security: Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, and Ministry of National Security. Bawku Township covers an area of less than 3 square kilometers. Are all the 3 ministries telling Ghanaians that they are so incompetent and incapable of restoring law and order to this small town of our country? We don't believe that. We don't believe so. We believe in the professionalism and the competence of our security forces. We all know that. What we believe is happening, however, is that the professionalism of Ghana's security forces is fatally compromised by various forces. Why should local chiefs and politicians have the leverage to brazenly interfere in the work of the security forces? Every Ghanaian should be deeply worried about this situation. Bawku doesn't need more security personnel. What Bawku needs is political will and resolve on the part of the relevant state institutions to enforce the law and order. What Bawku needs is a change of strategy in command and deployment, particularly on the part of the military. Sadly, the largest opposition party in Ghana, the National Democratic Congress, does not deem the Bawku crisis as a priority for them. The leadership has thus adamantly refused to issue an official statement on the Bawku crisis. The former President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC leadership have rather chosen to use the crisis to score cheap political points at the expense of the lives and people of Kusaug. The attitude exhibited by the main opposition party in the face of a crisis that has the potential of breaching the national security of the nation is irresponsible, to say the least. The National House of Chiefs, on its part, has chosen to remain mute over Bawku. Is this august house telling Ghanaians that it is toothless and spineless? We want to remind the NDC and the National House of Chiefs that their silence over Bawku crisis amounts to violence on the people of Kusaug. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, in light of the foregoing, it is abundantly clear that since 1932, the Mamproses have proven that they have no regard whatsoever to due process, unless due process favors their delusional aspirations. The current government, flip-flopping on the Bawku issue, is needlessly costing precious lives and in millions of taxpayers' seats. Does the government fully understand or appreciate the danger Bawku crisis poses to national security of our nation? By appealing for the intervention by the Santehene to help bring a resolution to the Bawku crisis, the president is telling Ghanaians that all the state institutions and ministries responsible for such issues have failed. That the Ministry of Chieftaincy and National House of Chiefs in particular have failed miserably on Bawku. By calling for negotiations and compromises in the face of threats and violence instead of enforcing the laws of the land, the government is telling Ghanaians that illegality, lawlessness, violence, and criminality pays. Due process is of no value. In conclusion, we, the Kusaug People Congress, want to make this clear. We want to make it clear that Kusaasis are not xenophobic. We welcome and honor all ethnic groups living in the Kusaug traditional area. We will defend and support all to aspire for any and every position that they qualify and work hard for. Their success is Kusaug's success. Kusaasis harbor no animosity towards Mamproses as an ethnic group. Most of us, including myself, have Mamprose mothers, cousins, nephews, wives, friends, etc. What we are absolutely against is the delusional mindset described above. At this point in time, mediation is not the priority of kusaas because Mamproses have treated appeal court and Supreme Court rulings with contempt. No outcome of a mediation will have any effect. And you don't treat delusions with mediations. Having said that, anyone seeking to mediate in the Baku conflict must first visit the whole of the Kusaug traditional area to acquaint themselves with the facts on the ground before we can take whatever they say to us seriously. You cannot sit in Accra and pontificate in Kusaug when you have never visited the area. To those who are going about saying that there is no Supreme Court ruling on the Baku chieftaincy, the Kusaug People's Congress would like to remind them that, and the good people of Ghana, of a ruling by Kusaas on 6th of June 1957. On that fateful day, Kusaas gathered in Baku and installed Abugrago Azoka I as our tribal chief. And we ruled on that day, our forefathers ruled, that under no circumstance whatsoever will a Mamprose ever become chief over Kusaas again. Never. Sure. This was the ruling by Kusaas people on the 6th of June 1957. Now that the state institutions and politicians have failed, the 25 divisional chiefs of the Kusaug traditional area and all Kusaas from the 6th administrative district of Kusaug, Baku, Pusiga, Zebila, Binduri, Garu, and Tempane are resolved to enforce the ruling of 6 June 1957 by our forefathers. The current Baku Naba and overlord of the Kusaug traditional area, Asigri Abugrago Azoka II, was not made chief by the Supreme Court ruling. He was not made a chief by any legal instrument. He was made a chief by we, the people of Kusaug. Legal instruments and court rulings only recognize Kusaas' right to self-determination. Kusaas as a people will never entertain any negotiations over our sovereignty and will never compromise on our hard-earned self-determination. The sovereignty of Kusaug will never ever be put up for bargaining. The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of every ethnic group in Ghana under the colonialism of another ethnic group. Long live Asigri Abugrago Azoka II. Long live Kusaug Traditional Council. Long live Kusaug People's Congress. Kusaug is rising. Kusaug
when it comes here.
Kusaug.
When it comes here.
Kusaug.
When it comes here.
Kusaug.
When it comes here.
Thank you very much. We are ready to take, we have to take a few questions, and we have the statement that we have prepared to release.
Are you back?
Go back.
Until
I got to the point when we were not prepared for any negotiation.
Yeah.
Then I got scared. I was scared because every problem must be resolved. And in resolving a problem, it must take two to tango. So if you want your problem to be resolved and you are not prepared to dialogue, how then do you take the problem solved? Again, if there is something that is being sacrificed, the only way to get that thing done is for the two people to come into a compromise, to agree that, oh, this is here, this is here. Now, give me something small. I'll give you something small. Then we agree to go forward. And now that you are not prepared to dialogue, to negotiate, how can we stop the Boko crisis? Even all the people that you have accused that they are not doing their work, they keep mute over the thing. If they all come up, stand up, and ready to work, and they are not prepared to negotiate, to dialogue, how then can they succeed in helping you solve the problem?
Thank you very much. I think that if you listen to me very carefully, I said we will never negotiate on our sovereignty. This case has been litigated. It has been ruled over by courts. On the floor of the Parliament of Ghana, the defense minister stood up and said that there is no chieftaincy problem in Boko. He said what is happening in Boko is criminality. My brother,